Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel, and really, welcome to the month of May, because that simply means Bless Online is going to be launching on Steam's Early Access this month. So this video is going to be covering Bless Online, and I'm going to be talking about some of the things that I've seen and researched and read so far leading up to the Steam launch for Western audiences, and really how the game will differ from its Asian counterparts that are already out there. And that's the news flash for you. I will be jumping into Bless Online the moment it comes out on Steam as my next MMORPG new player review. For those of you that have never heard of this game, what is Bless Online? Simply put, it is an Asian MMORPG made in Korea by the studio NeoWiz. Now, this game is already out. There is a Korean version of the game, and then there's a Japanese version of the game. There's more too, like Russia, but that got shut down because there were a lot of issues with the game's combat system and optimization, performance issues, and all that stuff. And that's really what delayed the Western release. That's all fixed now. That got fixed in 2017, last year, which is why we are this close to having the Western release on Steam. Now, I've been following Bless for some time, and I've had a look at the Korean version of the game, including other players and content creators and streamers streaming the game in Korean, just to get a feel of what this game was like in Asia before it comes to the West. Now, I think it's fair to say when it comes to Bless, and you'll see a lot of the footage and cinematics in the background while I'm talking on here, and there's going to be a lot of comparisons to the other big Korean MMOs, Black Desert Online and Arcade, and I think the comparisons are going to be fair, because when it comes to Korean MMOs that have come to the West, those two titles are going to be used as stable examples of how to succeed or how to properly monetize and, make revenue for those sorts of game in our markets. Now, when I say how to properly, that is from a developer's point of view, because players, on the other hand, we are kind of divided by it, right? Do we like some of the monetization systems we already see in BDO and Arcade? Probably not. And whenever you mention BDO and Arcade, sure, it has great graphics, it's got great combat system, it's got a great world and everything, but it always comes with the pay-to-win tag, and that is simply unavoidable. So with Bless Online, how are they going to be launching the West and trying to stay as far away from what those two games have attached to them, those pay-to-win monikers, right? So we'll go ahead and dive into stuff. First and foremost, let's talk about Bless. When Bless launches, players, we get to pick between two factions to play as, or two factions to represent, which is the Huron, I think, Huron? I'm bad at pronouncing names, and the Union. So these are two factions that you can play as, and there's going to be 7 races in Bless. You've got the usual humans, and then being an MMO, you will see some races. There's elves, and I believe there's this big bear, werewolf looking thing, and then obviously you got the trophy midget. I shouldn't say midget, I mean the halfling type race, which is almost standard now. I think BDO is the only Asian MMO that won't let you play as a tiny person. So kudos to BDO for not giving players that yet, but you can play as that in Bless Online. And it's also got a pretty in-depth character creator, but it's not going to be as functional or as in-depth or as realistic as Black Desert Online's character creator is going to be. And there's going to be a bunch of classes as well. I've already had a look and decided what I'm going to play. I mean, there's your standard hunters, your range, you've got your melee combat person, you've got the paladin, and it's called the paladin, tanking, healing, support, and also DPS, which is probably what I'm going to pick. And all these information about classes and races you can already see on the Steam app page or the web store, or on the Bless official website, the Western website, and that's blessonline.net. So for those type of information, if you care about that, go ahead and check that out. I'm here to talk about the more serious systems like combat and monetization. So let's start with that. Let's start with the combat system, because really one of the main issues or reasons why Bless kind of delayed its Western release was the combat system. Looking at the Korean version, which unfortunately I tried to get permission to use because I don't want to jump into the Korean client because I don't understand Korean and it's just a hassle. I can't really show you the Korean combat. Maybe by this time I would have already gotten permission and you might already be watching it, but it wasn't that bad in my opinion, but the player base's feedback was, and this is just me generalizing it or simplifying my understanding of what the player base wanted then, and it was the combat is not Black Desert Online enough. It needed to be more flashy. It needed to have weight. It needed to feel engaging. It just needed a more proactive and reactive style combat, and not a whole lot of the usual combat system that us that play Western theme park MMOs for most of our lives are used to. So that's what they've gone and done. Now, in the background, you will now see the Steam or the Western version of the new revamped combat system in the background, and it's going to be playing for all the different classes. Now, the first thing that jumps to me with Bless's combat is, okay, sure, it's actiony, and it now has all these combos that players will have to execute, and each class will have varying difficulty of combo chains that you need to execute. So if you play a more advanced class, for example, then your combos may be long and lengthy, but also powerful when it comes to dealing DPS or whatever it is your archetype is. Where some classes like the Paladin, for example, will have not a whole lot of combo executions or whatever, but they still can do a decent job. So the combo thing, I mean, when I reviewed Black Desert Online in February, I was like, okay, this is going to be hard to learn, or easy to grasp, hard to master, because that's what combos to me means. So that means I've got to mess around not only with my mouse, my left and right mouse clicks, but now I've got to incorporate all the other hotkeys, from Q and E and whatever, in addition to all the numbered hotkeys that you usually have. Now, those of you that are familiar with Asian games might not have a problem with this, but those of you that are going to be jumping into Bless for the first time, this could be a big change to how you approach combat in MMOs. So with the combo system, I don't quite mind it for me personally, because I've already played Black Desert Online, so I kind of know what to expect. And regardless, for me, whether it's tab targeting, traditional tab targeting MMO, or it's action MMO, I don't have a preference. I'm happy to play both. What matters to me is that combat does not feel dull. It does not feel like it doesn't have weight. Basically, some of the issues that the existing Asian player base called for these changes, or the reason why they wanted these changes, was to address those issues. So as long as those issues are addressed, I'm pretty happy to roll with the current combat system. Now, the other part about combat is the animations. Now, from the press releases I've been getting, and from whatever the marketing materials they put out on Steam and on their website, graphics, again, because it's an Asian MMO, it's one of those tropes where graphics and animations and aesthetics are going to be one of the high points of the game. And from the world trailer that you guys can already watch on their YouTube channel and on Steam, I would say the graphics in game is pretty gorgeous. It looks great. We are in 2018. Bless isn't exactly made like a year ago or 2 years ago, but for its age, it does have pretty decent graphics. Now, when you incorporate the combat system now, and you look at the animations in some of the background videos that's playing right now, I have an issue, and that largely comes down to movement and animations in combat. For some of these classes, you would see the upper body move in unison with how you execute your class and how you bring the sword down and whatever. And the problem is the bottom half of the body doesn't really sync with the upper half of the body. And when I saw these new class combat preview videos, that was the first thing that struck out at me. I'm like, okay, that may be odd, and that kind of reminds me of Secret World, the Secret World or Secret World Legends. But the thing is, with Secret World, you don't really zoom out that much, or your field of vision or your depth of view of your character, I'm usually over my shoulder. And with Bless, it just looks like you're always in view of the legs anyway during combat, because it is that sort of action MMO. So you can't exactly avoid that, because you're going to be doing a lot of combat, and that's a lot of the things that you will see. So the video does have a disclaimer that it is a pre-early access video clip or whatever, so it's still in development. I hope they change that, because it's kind of jarring to see the upper body move so flawlessly and it's so flashy, but the bottom half of the body is just static, and it's just not reacting in a logical or a kind of realistic way as one's body would move when you are in combat and you're in a combat stance and swinging weapons and everything. So I scrolled down to the comments, just trying to see if there's anybody that noticed this, and I'm not the only one. So it is a pretty obvious issue with the animations at the moment. But judging from what I've seen in the Korean version, it is a big step up. So combat system there, I'm looking forward to trying it out. Not looking forward to learning new combos, but then again, I'm going to just stick with the paladin and do my thing and level and do all the group content and stuff, so hopefully that'll go well. So next up, let's talk about how the Western version will significantly differ from the Asian versions out there currently. And I will have to give it to NeoWiz, because they've come out and said in their FAQs, and especially in news and even in a press release, that a large portion of the player base have said for many months before the game even announced that it was coming on Steam, that if there was ever a Western version of Bless, it must not be free to play, it must not be pay to win. So those are two things that NeoWiz have kept in mind all the time while in production of the Western version. And when they finally announced that it was coming to Steam, one of the first things they put out was that FAQ, where they talk about what exactly is going to be changing from the Korean and Japanese version. And they've come out and said, look, we've heard you loud and clear, players and player base, potential players, whatever. Bless Online is not going to be a free-to-play Asian MMORPG. It's going to be a buy-to-play MMORPG. And that in itself, for me, if I'm jumping into my expectation of the game, if it's a free-to-play, it's down here. If it's a buy-to-play, it's up here. If it's a sub, obviously, it's top brass. So for me to know that this is going to be a buy-to-play game, now there's a certain standard that I expect from the game. I don't want to see, all that nonsense of having advantage in the cash up and everything, even though it does happen. Case in point, Black Desert Online, which is something I'll talk about later on as well. But it's off to a good start. I mean, anytime a developer would significantly change its beliefs or payment model because they understand the current sentiment of how free-to-play games or free-to-play MMOs work, and how that would have a significant impact on the cash store, and then that has a rolling effect on the perception of the game, which then has a rolling effect on the population and popularity of said game. So they understand where it's coming from, and a large portion of why this is because they've had predecessors that have already taken this way or this path of launching in the West. Again, ArcAge, BDO. So I think Bless can see that as case examples and try and avoid some of the things that happened. But if I was NeoWiz and I'm looking at that, I'm like, you know what? Even though BDO that does have the pay-to-win tag along with it, so does ArcAge, and it does have a lot of people that have negative perception about BDO and their experiences, it's still very popular and it's still a cash cow. It still makes money. So NeoWiz might have looked at that and said, you know what, screw that. Let's just do it. Let's just go that way. Let's make it buy to play and then let's sell stuff in the cash shop. Never mind if people don't like the game. At least we make money. In all fairness, they could have done that, but they've chosen to come out and say word for word in the FAQ, no pay to win. We are going to hold you accountable, NeoWiz, if suddenly all this nonsense in the cash shop starts popping up. We will hold you accountable because you have put that in writing, and the backlash is going to be epic if you go against your word, and there's going to be so many people that's going to be calling you out on your bullshit if this comes to light. So hopefully you keep your word and we'll keep having fun. Over in the Asian versions, I'm guessing in the cash shop, there's going to be all those usual stuff, XP boosts, boost for this, boost for that, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. In the Western version, again, if you have a look at the FAQ, it does tell you what exactly is going to be in the store. First of all, there's going to be two currencies. One is in-game tokens, which means you can spend your in-game gold or whatever currency it is you earn in Bless, and then you transfer that to this token, which you can then buy stuff from the store, cosmetic items, services, and whatever. The second currency is something that you'll have to pay real money for, but you can use that to buy the same stuff if you don't want to use your in-game currency. So that simply means that if you want to support the game beyond your buy-to-play entry fee, then you can buy all this extra currency. The thing is, we don't exactly know what exactly these boosts and services are because there has been no open beta, which is kind of strange. Like I wasn't around when BDO launched in the Western market because I was region blocked, so I can't exactly say if there was an open beta or not for BDO and ArcAge. But I think Bless could have used an open beta period. I mean, we're already in May, so I don't think we'll see it. I know there's been an alpha and a closed beta, which players are already doing stuff, but you can't exactly see content because there's an NDA for that. So by not having an open beta, we can't really, nobody exactly knows what the cash store is going to hold. But for now, I'll give them props for sticking by to play, for stating that there's going to be no pay to win elements. It's a direct shot to BDO, which is comforting for those of you that have quit BDO because of said reasons. And yeah, we'll wait and see how that impacts the player base at launch. Combat system and the cash shop and payment model aside, I mean, those two things are already pretty enticing for me, especially the cash shop stuff. But another thing about Blessed that I really like is that they have a focus on story. And if you guys have been following my channel for a while, you know that for me that is a very important aspect of MMORPGs. Even though it may have not started that way, MMOs were all about the social aspect, the raiding, the grinding, that kind of stuff. I think story, in the world that we live in now, storytelling is in our everyday life, in movies and books and TV and now video games as well. It's a form of escapism that we all use, and MMO stories have now become a significant thing for me. And I do appreciate that Bless are taking their stories seriously, unlike BDO, for example, where the story, in all honesty, and I've said this in the review too, it's half-assed and it's not the main selling point of the game. So with Bless, each of the 7 races that you can play in Bless, each of them will have their own stories. Whether or not it's going to be part of a main quest arc or a side quest arc, doesn't matter. I just like that each of the races have stories, because that was one of the things I felt was sorely missing in BDO, for example. You have all these different races and then you've got all the different classes, but there's no backstory whatsoever about why you pick this or how you grow. I mean, you do grow in the world based on your sandboxy type actions, but you don't grow or you don't learn anything from a lore perspective about your class and your race and how you fit into the BDO world. It's just all about the Black Spirit and the territorial war that's going on there between Valencia, Medaya, and Calphion and all that stuff. That in itself is a decent story, but it's just not satisfying enough. So with Bless, I do like hearing that 7 races, 7 different storylines. To me, like I said in some of my streams, that kind of follows the Guild Wars 2 model of storytelling. You got each of the races, and each of them have their own personal stories, which does give you more replayability, because you can then roll each of the races and see what their story is all about. So I do like that about Bless, which kind of makes it interesting for me, because I usually just play humans, the human race in all my MMOs, but I do like rolling an alt race here and there just to see what their story is like, and if it's actually better and more engaging, then I'll more than likely stick with it. Any reservations do I have with that? Yes. I mean, no disrespect, but the localization could be poorer, because that's how it was for Black Desert Online. It probably is better for the Western version of BDO, the American and the European version, but the Southeast Asian version, the localization, the translation, even the voice acting was off, and that just threw off the story. So even if you are a big story hunter, you may not enjoy what you see, even though the story may be excellently, executed in the Korean or Japanese versions, because that's localized to them. So my hopes are kind of high in terms of story, but not that high. But I do appreciate that story aspect of having a main arc for all these races to go through, because there will be large parts of Blast where the progression comes into play, where you may get a lot of grinding, because in the Korean version, grinding mobs was a popular way for players in parties to get experience faster. That's one of the mechanics that Bless has. If you group up in a party, you're going to get a party-wide buff or boost that's going to give you more XP. So that's kind of an incentive for you to play with other players. So that makes being in guilds and playing with friends a better deal than going solo. Which is sad for me, because I always go solo for my leveling streams, so I may have to incorporate, I may have to go out and make friends. No, in all seriousness, that is actually really cool for trying to put social back into MMOs. And what is also really nice when it comes to content is that the game has dungeons. Blast Online will have your traditional dungeon romps, and then there's going to be 10-man raids as well. And based on the information on the Steam App Store, if you go and take a look at the dev diary for dungeons, it is clearly stated there that some of these raids and dungeons are related to the game's main story. That's cool, and that is something that some Asian MMOs omit entirely, and I like having that back in dungeons. I like having dungeons back, basically. And again, this is from me just recently finishing BDO. I really felt the lack of dungeons. I mean, you do have all these bosses that you can go and fight on the open world using scrolls in BDO, but it is no substitute for dungeons. It's just not. Especially when you talk about a Western audience, we know dungeons. It's what we know best. If folks in the East love grinding mobs for 10 hours, we love grinding dungeons all day. That's what we know. And so I love that Bless will have a bunch of dungeons in addition to those raids as well for groups to do during leveling and at the end game as well. And it does have solo dungeons as well. So it's one of those Asian MMOs things. Like I played recently, like Mu Legend, for example, and a bunch of others where there's going to be some dungeons on the landscape that is one-man dungeons that you can go in and do. But I guess you can also bring in a friend. So think of it as Elder Scrolls Online's delves, solo delves or whatever. You go in, it's instance, and you can just complete it on your own and stuff like that. So I really like that. Really, really cool. Can't wait to see if it's worth doing or not. So that's the PvE frontier. What about the PvP frontier? What's going on with Bless's PvP? From the marketing, again, it will tell you if you see the Steam page, it has 100 versus 100, rank versus rank, and it's got open world PvP. And shortly after launch, they're looking at adding in like arena battlegrounds, so 5v5, 10v10, that kind of thing. But that's not going to be in the Steam launch at the very beginning. So what can players expect? Those huge fights, I guess, in addition to the open world PvP. So the flagging and unflagging and all that stuff. So that basically means it's kind of following BDO's model of the PvP system, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm not. There's been talk about there being no option to opt out of PvP. So that means even if you are a casual solo player, you're trying to avoid PvP when you're questing the high areas, you can just get ganked and that's it, because there's no way to opt out. Now, if this is true, this is a mistake, because Blast won't have PvP dedicated servers and won't have PvE dedicated servers. All their servers are based on this style of play where PvE is going to happen, PvP is going to happen, and whatever is the outcome, it's just there. Deal with it. This is a mistake. I think a lot of PvP players will love this because that's what it is on Black Desert Online, because BDO is kind of made for PvPers. That's their meta, that's the end game part of. And not only that, the game also gives you those big guild versus guild territorial wars, node wars, naval conquest, and all that stuff. So there's more to do than just this open world ganking and stuff. Blast Online doesn't have all the additional content for PvP yet. It's just going to start off, with the 100v100 and the open world flag PvP system. So it'll be interesting to see how the player base react to that in the first month and see how much griefing goes on, or if it's going to backfire or not. I mean, for me, when I'm streaming or when I'm leveling for the review or whatever, I try and avoid open world PvP because I don't want that to kind of experience the review process, especially if I'm covering something PvE. But during PvP, I may just flag up and go do some shenanigans. I don't know. So that's what we're looking at for PvP. So what about Blast Online's USP? What is a USP? It is a unique selling point. What's going to make Blast Online uniquely different from Black Desert Online or R-Gage or any of the other Asian MMOs out there? And by all accounts, one of the things that the team there in NeoWiz is really, really proud of is their taming system. So in Blast, it's going to be this big world, so many nice cities, so many nice biomes and environments for you to go and check out. And again, the graphics for those are absolutely stunning. Now, when you have a world like that, when you have a big world, it won't matter if it feels dead, if it feels empty, if it feels static and not organic, which is something I found in Black Desert Online, because you got all of these scripted people, NPCs in the world doing the same thing on loop, and it just feels lifeless. And if it wasn't for that huge player base that BDO has, the game would just feel like it'll just be a weird place. What Bless is doing outside of towns and cities and everything on the landscape, it's putting a lot of these organic creatures on the landscape, and they're going to vary in style and race, not race, but species. And the cool thing is, for every cool creature you come across, you can tame them to become companion pets or mounts. So if you come across like this cool flying bird or whatever, and you're like, oh shit, I'm totally gonna tame that so I can fly. That is a thing. And that's what's kind of exciting for me, because I've never... The only MMO, and it's not even an RPG, the only MMO where I've been able to get that feeling was in Ark Survival Evolved, dinosaur game. Come across a cool dinosaur, I'm like, do I want to kill that for the meat, or do I want to tame it to ride it? You know, that kind of thing. So Blast is the first MMORPG that I'm going to be playing that has this system, which I think could be really, really cool. Is it just a gimmick? Is it just a shtick? Will I get bored of it? You know, is it going to be like a Pokemon thing where you catch like 500 of these creatures and once you're done, you're done? For me, it's most likely how it's going to be is I'm going to be looking for the most sought after creature, the one that can fly, the one that has the best speed or whatever, or the best looking, the one that's going to suit me or my cosmetic outfit. I don't know, but I'm probably only going to catch like a few, maybe 5 pets, 5 mounts, and I'm done, unless something cool comes along. That's the type of guy I'm at. I am. I'm not going to go and spend so much time on this taming system, but it'll be great to show this off on a stream, because it just sounds great. I don't know if you could do it in a group. I don't know if you could do it if it's just a solo thing, but you know, BDO has this thing where you can go out in the world and you can lasso horses, and then you can, you know, tame the horse and sell it off and whatever. So with Blast having these entirely free range, large amounts of species to pick from, I would say it's definitely more interesting, but is it practical? We will see. But that is so far Blast's USP. That's its unique selling point. And I think a lot of people will look at that as fluff, because it's in some regards that's what it is. You know, it's fluff. That's it. You're just catching animals and you're taming it to ride, or you're taming it as pets and companions. But I still think it's pretty cool, and we don't often see that in MMO. So it'll be interesting to see how that works in the bigger world of Blast. So yeah, pretty excited. 7 races, 5 classes to choose from, big Blast world, 2 factions to represent, those 7 race stories to play through, the hundreds of creatures to tame, all the dungeons to do, the PvP to avoid or to gank and have some fun. And most importantly, another Asian MMO coming to the West, and you know, following in the footsteps of BDO and ArcAge, and there's going to be a lot of attention in this one just to see how it's going to change things. And I think a lot of people that are tired or fatigued by BDO's grinding would come over and have a look. And that's another thing I haven't talked about, the grinding, you know, because the Korean and Japanese version grinding is a prominent and a viable way to level. With the Western version, again, in the FAQ, Neowiz has said our focus is on questing and story, and they are smart in doing that, as I said, because that's how Western audiences, or a majority of Western MMO players, think and play like. So it's good of them to know their demographic before jumping in. But grinding is not going away. It's still going to be there if that's your playstyle. So, and you know, final note here. I don't want Blast Online to emulate BDO. I don't want them to emulate any existing Asian MMO in the West. Just stick with their guns, do their own thing, and whatever works for them. I think the fact that they've gone buy to play is a huge pro already. BDO is buy to play too, but BDO has gone on and added stuff in their cash shop based on what sells well back in the East. So over the years and months and whatever, even now in the Southeast Asian version, I'm seeing stuff in the store that I know have been super popular in the East and in America and Europe, and before coming to Southeast Asia, and that's really dictated what sells and how people make money or use their money to buy the important stuff. With Blast, you know, I don't want it to be buy to play and talk about all this non-pay to win stuff in the store, only to find out that the hotcake selling stuff in the free version of the game back in Korea is going to be coming over to on the Steam global launch, and then they're going to just, you know, skirt around the description and say this is all convenience and all service, you know. So we'll see. I mean, I'm just rambling on because it's a long day, but I'm kind of excited too because it's a new MMO and I'm ready. I am ready to give myself up for another Asian MMO. A good thing too that I jumped into Rift in between, because if I were to do BDO and then another Asian MMO back to back, I don't think I would survive that. But now that I've had the Rift Prime in between, I think I'm ready to go. So I'm gonna be jumping in for a review. I will let you guys know the exact date of the first stream as soon as we know when the launch date is gonna be. There's no information about a beta at the moment, so I don't think there's gonna be an open beta at this point. But if there is, then great, we can go in and we can go check out the game before making a purchase. Now, speaking of purchase, like I said, Bless is going to be a buy-to-play game. And there are going to be Founders Packs. So that's going to give, I think, players a head start, maybe. I'm just speculating at this point. But that's what I'd expect if there were Founder Packs. There's going to be a couple of days head start, and then there's going to be some additional boosts and stuff, maybe some cool cosmetics and whatever, head start pack or whatever. And because it's on Steam, I think it's more than likely we will see some of those, you know, benefits for buying a Founders Pack. So yeah, speaking to some of you prior to, you know, hitting the month of May, some of you are excited for Bless, if you guys have told me in comments and on stream, and some of you are kind of on the fence because, you know, okay, I'm a little more reserved about Asian MMOs. Trust me, I was just like you, and I understand that, you know, committing to a buy-to-play game is always going to be a risk, especially when it's like an Asian MMO. And I hate saying this because, look, I'm Asian, but there are issues with Asian MMOs that I cannot deal with. So yeah, Asian MMOs. So I'm gonna be the guy that's gonna spend the money and the time to jump in and see if it's worth playing. So if you are on the fence, feel free to tune in to my streams when I start streaming them, or you can always go check out, you know, the huge amount of content creators, YouTubers, streamers that are all gonna be covering the game as well. So take all that into consideration. And then, but there's no substitute for jumping into the game yourself. So if there's any free passes or guest codes or whatever, then I'm probably, if I get some, I'll give them out on my Discord. So if you've not already on my Discord, links at the bottom in the description box below. I'll keep you guys updated there about Bless. So that's it from me, you guys. For those of you that have played the Korean version of Bless, hey, feel free to share your thoughts in the comment section below about some of the changes and, you know, your thoughts on the Western release. And for those of you thinking about jumping in or have any questions about Bless, feel free to share all your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. So hit the like button for Bless Online, and if you're new here, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel here, where I cover a whole bunch of MMOs for reviews, including Bless Online. And yeah, I'll greatly appreciate that. So once again, Adrian here, and I bless you for watching. Roses are red, violets are blue. If you want to watch more videos, click on these cards. Anyone would do. And if you want to watch more videos, subscribe to the channel with the button down here. I know you want to.